Hadass spoke of tshuva, God's willingness to forgive the people and give them another chance. But that forgiveness by God doesn't come so easily for God also. To be able to let go of anger, of disappointment, even for God, at least described in the Torah, is not so easy. In fact, it's something quite distinctive in terms of monotheism. Listen to that brief exchange. God says to Moses, chapter 32, verse 9, you saw this people, v'hinei am kasha orevhu. It's a stiff-necked people. You know what that means, stiff-necked? When you put a yoke on this people, which helps balance the weight in order to do the plowing in the field, you have to be able, if you're the ox, to move your neck in order to go in the direction that you're supposed to. But this people, God says, I've given them a yoke in order to move forward, in order to have the way, but they just go where they want to go. And so God continues in this exchange and says, V'ata, and now, hanichali, leave me alone. God is saying to Moses, V'yichar api vahem, let my nostrils flare against them. Let me be outraged. V'achalem, and I will consume them. Ve'aseh odcha l'goy gadol, and I will make you, Moses, a great nation. I'll start over. And God has experience in doing this, wiping out, starting over. Moses, now a lesser leader might think, wow, this is my chance. But Moses will say, if that's the God, this is not what you want. This is your people. This is not good for your reputation. This is not what you promised. And then the most dramatic line in that same paragraph, V'yinachem Adonai al hara'ah, and the Lord renounced the bad, asher diber lasot lamo, which he had said he was going to do to his people. Now listen to this imagining from the Talmud. Masechet Brachot, Lamed Bet Aleph. Amar Rabbi Abahu. So Rabbi Abahu says, Ilmale mikra katuv iyavshar lamro. Were this verse not written in the Torah, it would be impossible for me to say the following. This teaches that Moses sees the Holy One, blessed be He, just like a person who seizes his friend by his cloak. V'amar lefanav, and says to him, Ribono Shalom, Master of the universe, Ein ani menachachecha ad timcho v'tislach lahem. Master of the universe, I shall not release you until you forgive and pardon them. Isn't that a chutzpahdik imagining? Imagine that. It's our sacred text. One of many imaginings. It's not the only way of viewing God, but such a demonstration of human power, or if you will, God's willingness to be spoken to have God change the mind, but even more, this willingness to see God in human-like terms, not only in terms of emotions, but even by extension in the imagining, as if Moses, ki'ilu, as if Moses grabbed God by the collar and said, I'm not, shook him up, I'm not letting you go. Pretty dramatic. But there's one other piece in that imagining, and I'm too limited on time to develop this the way I had, if I had lots of time, would have developed it. Here's what it says in that exchange with God and Moshe. Vayachal Moshe And Moses pleaded, verse 11, Vayachal Moshe, Moses pleaded at Pnei Adonai Elohav, and before the face of the ever-present one, his God, V'yomer, and he said, Lama Adonai Yechare Apcha Bamecha, and he said, why, ever-present one, are you so angry with your people? And the rabbis ask, what is this word, Vayachel, that Moses pleaded? It should normally be, and Moses prayed to God. Vayachal is an unusual word. It's like the same word, liot choleh, to be sick. And Rabbi Abahu, in that continuation, will say, it's as if Moses, in challenging God, was sickened himself in doing so. It didn't come easily. He didn't want to. He knew that in his standing up to God on behalf of the people, and that was one of your lines, that Moses stood up for the people before God, that he did it in a way that made him feel gut-wrenched in doing so. A word to link it to contemporary times. I had the privilege this week of having a public conversation with my teacher and friend, Rabbi Elie Feinstein at Valley Beth Shalom. It's a congregation of 1,500 families, one of the flagships of conservative Judaism, that for so many years was led by Rabbi Harold Schulweis, who was the rabbi's rabbi. His successor, Rabbi Elie Feinstein, wrote a doctoral dissertation on Rabbi Harold Schulweis. And in doing so, I had this chance on Wednesday to talk to Rabbi Feinstein, to ask him what was hard about writing that dissertation. He said, organizing it, because Rabbi Schulweis did so much. And he said he ultimately understood that there were three major foci for Rabbi Schulweis, the rabbi's rabbi. And those were theology, community, and morality, conscience. These are some of my books of Rabbi Schulweis. I just grabbed them before the service. These deal with theology, which was his doctoral dissertation. This was his doctoral dissertation. About how do you relate to God, all the more after the Holocaust. In community, he was the rabbi who created things like chavarot, para-rabbis, and in so many ways empowered his congregation to be involved in doing. And Rabbi Feinstein shared that he never wrote that book, but as they were clearing out his office after he passed, they found a manuscript called Community, which was a book that he had looked to have as his final book. When I went to visit with Rabbi Schulweis, which I did a number of times, he gave me a book that he had just also finished called Conscience. And that was the third aspect of his work, about how part of what it means to be a rabbi is to challenge community, not unlike our prophets about right or wrong. What I was curious in asking my friend Rabbi Feinstein about was his High Holiday sermon on first day Rosh Hashanah, in which he spoke about a time in America in which Madison Square Garden was filled with Ku Klux Klan, in which politics of fear and hate had dominated America. And more than any of my colleagues in that Rosh Hashanah sermon, Rabbi Feinstein spoke with great passion, it's worth watching it on YouTube, about his concern for America today. And I was curious how it was received. He said he lost some members. And he said the sermon somehow spread all over the country, even over the world. And he said, it's not who I am. I was sickened by it. Vayachal Moshe. I don't want to give that sermon. I don't talk politics, he said. But I gave it because people said to me, you're Rabbi Schulweis' successor. And he spoke about the need for conscience, about the need for morality, about a prophetic voice. And he said, it was out of the norm for me, but I felt I had to do it to be true to what it meant to be the successor to my teacher and to be a rabbi. And so all the more, what I take from this exchange of Moses and God is that sometimes you have to talk truth that's uncomfortable to a community, which is not what I'm looking to do in this moment. Sometimes. But as a rabbi and as an individual, one should not do it with ego. Not unlike Moses, who says, "Wipe me out. It's not about me." And you can't do it with the joy of doing it. Frankly, it's only real when the people who hear it don't like